Welcome to the Why Not podcast. I'm glad that you're here. Sometimes folks need to make some hard decisions. If you've ever been in that situation, well, so have we. And that's actually what we're going to be talking about today. So, hey, I think I've got a really good panel here to talk about someone who's been here a couple times at least, and some fresher faces. But let's go ahead around the table and introduce ourselves. And of course, you should know this if you've watched a few of these before. We got someone from every tier of the enlisted structure, junior enlisted, NCO, and senior NCO. Let's start off with our senior NCO.
So I'm Senior Master Sergeant John Appleby. I work Traffic Management Office, TMO, as you might know me, working logistics. I've also worked in other places, such as I've worked post office back when it was special duty. And then I've had to work some different various jobs related to TMO, but still a little different. So yeah, I've got plenty of experience when it comes to making hard decisions.
Right on. Thanks for being here.
Of course.
Staff Sergeant Joseph Patnod. I work at the 5th Force Support Squadron. This is my third base overall. I'm coming from Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst, where I was a combat training instructor at the 421st Combat Training Squadron out of the Expeditionary Center over there.
What's going on? I'm Airman Callahan. I've only been in Minot for about 2 years. I work over at the cybersecurity office.
Mm-hmm.
So very excited to be here.
Yeah, well, only 2 years. We appreciate what you've been doing here. So, yeah, obviously, when it comes to hard decisions, I mean, you're going to encounter stuff all throughout your military career that you've wondered, what's the right thing to do in this situation? Do I wait? Do I act now? What are some of those, like what comes to mind when you're talking about hard decisions? And we can start off anywhere.
Oh, okay. Well, we were talking about it a little bit in the hallway there. We were saying that just joining the military itself is already super difficult decision. You're coming in as like an 18-year-old, maybe even 17, and you have no idea what you want to do in life. And you're like, F it. Like, I think I'm just going to join the military and sign that paper.
Is that what you did?
No, I did not. I joined a lot later. I joined when I was about 26 after college. I have some work experience. And I was just, after COVID, I was like, damn, I really can't find a job out here. I decided, the military is the path to go. So,
yeah, I guess that makes it an easy decision when you feel like you're searching for work, right?
yeah. Definitely.
I mean, I agree with Airman Callahan. A lot of the things that I felt were hard decisions at the time, I look back because I've been in for about 8 years now, and things that I thought were hard decisions as an A1C or a senior airman, I look back as an NCO and I'm like, it wasn't really that hard. But I have recently discovered what it's like to supervise airmen at times, especially airmen fresh out of tech school. And then it's a hard decision. In that case, for me, it's like, am I giving them the right advice about their military careers going forward?
Yeah, I definitely know. Basically, I've seen all of our airmen come from tech school, so that's a whole different ball game, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Because I started being an NCO as a combat training instructor. I didn't really have any troops until maybe last year, and he was a senior airman who was already an adult. And then now I get to Minot and like, hey, here's about half a dozen airman basics who just got out of tech school, and they're probably disappointed, one, that they're coming to Minot, and two, that they're in services. And we need you to sort of kind of help with that, help them realize that, one, this actually isn't really that bad of a place. It's not that bad of a job. And, that the military can be great if you make it work for you.
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask about that? I mean, we did a podcast discussion specifically about like how everybody's, you have the warrior mindset and everybody's job is important. Like, I don't know whether that's going to come out before this or after this. We'll do some editing and figure that one out. But yeah, how do you explain to those airmen who come into services, who come to Minot, that this is a good job and that it can be good for them?
I always try to relate it back to my personal experience because I didn't choose services. Services kind of chose me. I originally wanted to be finance, but so I went to Dyess Air Force Base with my first base, and it's very similar to Minot in some respects, where it's like tiny Air Force Base, sort of kind of, medium-sized city, and then nothing for hours except just flat terrain. There were ups and downs of being in Dyess. There were ups and downs of working in the DFAC. But then when I went to Joint Base McGuire Dix Lakehurst to be a combat training instructor, I was experienced to a whole new world of possibilities where you can sort of kind of see that side of the military that one, combat is a thing. People are actually risking their lives, and you have to sort of kind of instill a warrior mindset not just sometimes airmen, but also NCOs and some younger officers that never saw that side of the military. And I use those experiences to relate to these young airmen that just because you're here working in the dining facility in Minot Air Force Base now doesn't mean that you'll be doing the same thing in about 2-3 years. You may cross train, you may be doing something completely different. You may end up commissioning, and you could start being a food service worker at the dining facility and end up being a pilot for an F-35 for all that you know at the time. So it's just getting them to understand that where you are now is not where you're going to be in the next few years. And sometimes you may even look back, like I do sometimes, like, sometimes I wish I could just go back to being an airman flipping burgers in the dining facility at times.
Oh, I know that feeling too well.
Well, hey, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And we've talked, Master Sergeant Appleby, about, you were on that particular episode, the Warrior Mindset, but what are some difficult decisions that you've encountered in your career? How did you navigate that situation?
Well, something I found interesting with what you were just saying about decisions you made when you were younger, and now you kind of look back at those decisions and you're like, man, like wasn't really a hard decision. But I think it's because you know how it turned out, and I think that's what makes things hard. That's what makes hard decisions, the unknown factors.
Yes.
And kind of like when I came into the military, I didn't know what to expect. I mean, back then, we were in Iraq and Afghanistan. War was, you watch the news, people getting blown up, and people are dying, and you don't know, am I going to be that guy? So it's the unknown factor, I think, is what creates a lot of hard decisions. And so kind of like what you alluded to also later on is that you talk to your people to let them know, like, hey, there might be you might be having a hard decision. There's some unknown. So let me kind of bring some things to light so that you can try to make a better sound decision. You're trying to guide them through. And that's what we as senior leaders and, leaders have to do for our airmen. And that is help them understand like what is going on, what, and then try to, not coerce them, but help them make the right decision. So
persuade them to make the right decision.
And hopefully hopefully you take away the fear that they might have of like, well, if I do this, what might happen to me? Hopefully you're trying to alleviate that by, walking them through. So, I mean, I've been in for a while now, 17 and a half years. I've had to make a lot of decisions. One decision that I really had was when it comes to people's livelihoods. That's when I have a really tough decision because, the lens is I'm a blue, right? I'm all about feelings and emotions. And so I sympathize and empathize with people, especially so I had one person where we had to talk about their reenlistment. Do we let them reenlist? They were a very mediocre worker, and we looked at their records, and yeah, they didn't look good, but nice person. They wanted to stay in. They wanted to do 20 years. They had their own plans, and I unfortunately had to be that guy where I had to go to my commander and say, hey, I non-recommend this guy for reenlistment. It's just unfortunately the records are not that great, and in the work center they're hindering the work center, and so that decision was made, and that person was forced to separate. That was hard for me.
Yeah,
because again, that's someone's livelihood, that's someone's career. But in the end, I was able to find some solace in knowing that it's going to better improve the work center with that person gone. It's going to help that person because if that person would have stayed, I felt like there was going to be more action taken against them later, where then they're going to potentially lose rank, lose some of their entitlements, and I don't want to rob them of that. So that's why I made that hard decision. And while they may not be able to see that decision and why you're making it and why it's helping them, how do you tell someone, "Hey, I'm helping you by helping you not reenlist"? I,
Yeah, I mean it's painful to find out that maybe you need that wake up call in your life to just be like, hey man, like sometimes the military is what saves you. You need to get out of the military and fix your life.
And it wasn't like we didn't try to help this person out. Like we had plenty of sit downs for almost a good year. We've been trying to help this person through it, but it just wasn't clicking for them. And the saying is, not everybody's built for the military.
Mm.
And so for me, that was a tough decision. And people seem to think that, especially with our leaders, that we're quick to be like, okay, you're getting Article 15, you're losing this and that, and the command quickly signs off. I'll tell you now, I've been in plenty of discussions where that is not the case. There's a lot of, okay, what are we doing? Okay, what do they do? Okay, what's the severity of it? What are we really talking about? Someone just coming to work late? Okay, are we really looking to take a strike for that, or can it not be fixed with other means? There's a lot of discussions, and that's what helped me through my tough decision is talking to my peers about, here's what I'm seeing. You're my sanity check. Am I making the right call? Is it something you would do differently? And in the end, a lot of my peers came back saying, I've never seen this before, but yes, I agree with you. This, you got to let them go. So, and that's another thing too, is you got to be able to talk to other people.
Yeah.
And you got to be willing for people to go against you. You got to be willing to have people tell you that, hey, that decision you're making, it's a terrible decision, and hopefully they can back it up with facts. And you got to be receptive and take your pride out of it and say, okay, well, I'm going to listen. Tell me why you think I'm making a bad decision. And trust me, you're going to want to be defensive, but instead of thinking of a way to come back at them when they're talking to you about it, like how to respond to what they're saying, instead listen to what they're saying, digest on it. When they're done talking, keep digesting on it and then speak. So that way, because as I say, I'm a blue, right? I've had to develop that, what I'm just told you, as my way of not coming across as a blue saying, well, I think. It's more of, okay, so based off what you just said, and if I understand you correctly, what is that doing? That's being factual. Now I'm taking the time to understand.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, once I do make that decision, I can say that, hey, I listen to my leaders, because that's the one thing I tell my leaders. Yes, I'm a senior, but just because I'm a senior, when I say, hey, we're going to do this, I don't need, yes, sir. No, I need you to tell me, am I making a bad decision? So you got to be open to criticism and people to, basically tell you that, hey, you're doing the wrong thing. So, but without, it's driving this whole, I could talk on for hours. So I'll just kind of leave it there. And
no, that's, yeah, it made me think that, I mean, that's something that, people get frustrated with, where they're like, do I share this information? Like there's a lot of decisions that are being made, and at the lowest level, we probably, like, you hear that all the time, where you've probably told people that, of like, hey, make sure you handle this at the lowest level, because by the time it gets to somebody else, you no longer have the decision space to do anything about it yourself.
100%.
So, does anyone have an example of something like that happening, where you handled something at the lowest level, and because you did that, like, it was clear, like, and in the future things worked out, but if you hadn't, that it would have blown up?
Yeah, I would say I definitely have. Yeah, a few of my colleagues and I, we've gone through some stuff, I don't want to say specifically, but through our office and whatnot, and definitely handling it at our level definitely saved us a massive headache, and somebody kicking down our door, screaming at us, and all that stuff. It definitely helps, really, just kind of working with your guys like at a lower level and just kind of ironing out anything you guys have going on, whether it's personal or if it's work related. I notice like a lot of personal stuff always enters the workspace, but you shouldn't really try to let that impede on like your workflow and everybody else's kind of performance. Because I know some guys, they'll be like, you know, at home I don't really do much, or I'm going through a breakup, or I'm going through this or that,
Mm.
and they come to work and they're just kind of like shooting themselves in the foot, and they're like, I don't really want to do anything today, you know, I just want to just chill, right? I'm
Right.
just hanging out. I'm just gonna be a body. If you need me, maybe you can ask. And that's kind of it.
I've
Normally we get
watched the Warrior Mindset. I'll fix that.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, watch that episode.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to do it.
No, no.
Oh,
you're-
we got to plug. I think we've plugged that episode like 3 times now. The people should watch, our whole catalog. I mean, that's a good point. Is that sometimes people think they can just not do anything, and
Yeah.
that's also a decision you're making.
Mhm.
Is that I'm not going to do anything, but there's after effects for everything we do.
Yeah.
They want to give up. It's like
Yeah.
they come to a tough problem and they just want to be, again, hard decision needs to be made, but instead they're like, maybe I'll just put my head in the sand and hopefully this goes away.
Kick the can down the road.
Or, yeah, and it's like that's not how you fix your problems. You got to be going head on. Now, I am curious when you're handling things at the lowest level, though, there's obviously going to be like like problems, right? Like
Yeah.
there might be differing ideas. So did you have that and did you work through it by chance?
I would say yeah, because when we initially started kind of like, I would say headbutting each other, because, some people may feel that they deserve like a day off. It's like, well, I had to work late or whatever. And they're like, hey, since I work, an extra 2 hours, 3 hours yesterday, I'm coming in and I'm just going to kick my feet up and I'm just going to relax. And you're like, hey, you're kind of shooting everybody else in the foot when you're just chilling here. You're not, pulling your load. It's like, yeah, it sucks that maybe you worked a little later, but next time you can ask the rest of us to do that as well. Right. So addressing that head on, I mean, granted, people are going to be upset for a little bit, but normally they end up getting over it and they're like, oh, I understand. I get that.
The alternate title for this topic could have been "Just Communicate."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just conflict resolution?
Yeah,
I
it could
mean,
be totally.
I mean, there's 1,000 ways to skin this cat, but
Yeah, interesting scenario sometimes. Like my story of making a hard decision whenever I certainly didn't want to because I knew it was going to be so much more work for me. I deployed, and like 3 days later, a bunch of information came down from the top of how we had to do our job. That we needed to basically not share locations of the photos we were taking, and we still needed to be publishing things, but we couldn't let anybody know where things were being taken from. So I realized that in that moment, I was going to have to write up an entirely new worksheet for all of our wings to kind of help them navigate that entire situation. But I also realized that we had to close any potential points of sharing that information. So that meant that all public ways that they were able to be identified, like which wings they were with, I would have to individually go find them and then pull them off of like public websites. And that was very difficult, scrubbing all of that. And I had to tell our colonel who was in charge of us. I was like, sir, I'm sorry, but there's this extra vulnerability that was overlooked. And I waited probably about 30 seconds before I did anything. But the reason I even waited that 30 seconds is because I didn't want to do the work because I knew it was going to take me several days to just navigate it. And then after that point, it was going to be me using a very complicated tracker to keep track of everybody's work until it was fully able to be QC'd by the highest levels of public affairs. So I knew all of that. And sometimes you just have to bite the bullet. So are there any situations where you identified that for yourself where you're just like, I have to do something because waiting is just going to make my life worse?
basically it's like a moral, ethical dilemma kind of situation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, what about you, boss?
One of the things that like immediately comes to mind, and looking back on it, it's one of those scenarios where this seemed like a really hard decision. What do I do moment. But when I was deployed to Saudi Arabia in 2020, one, like everyone was super stressed out because COVID had just hit big, but I had to travel from the LSA, the living area, all the way to the flight kitchen area, Ops House, that's where I was working at the time. And I started hearing some funky sounds from the car. It turns out the tire was popped in a couple places because the roads were just terrible out there. But like we weren't able to figure that out at the time. But when we roll up to the Saudi checkpoint, they're stopping us, and none of us spoke Arabic. So we're trying to communicate, of all things, through Google Translate, and
Google magic.
yeah, it's just not working because like I can't, the verbiage is just not translating from their language to ours. So at some point I'm like, okay, I just have to get out of this vehicle and figure out what's going on so we can actually, like bring our communication down to the lowest level and they can actually like point at what they're seeing. Turns out there were two thumb hole size holes in the car or in the tire of the car. And I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. That's what they're trying to do. So we eventually were able to get the vehicle towed out of there, and a couple security forces guys saw the whole thing from the tower. They came over, they gave us a ride to the DFAC, but at the time I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. I don't know what's going to, because this is brand new to the first deployment ever as a senior airman. And I'm now in a leadership role of like 8 people that are in the vehicle, and none of us know what's going on. So just going back to like having to deal with all of those unknowns, like I don't know what's going to happen as soon as I'm getting out of the car. Like, are they going to accuse me of a crime? Sounds ridiculous looking back on it, but that's just one of those things that like I had to make that snap decision in the moment.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you were an NCO yet, but yeah, I mean, you raise up a good point of you're not always going to be the NCO who's making decisions. You're
No,
going to be,
sometimes you're the A1C or the senior airman, and I see it all the time, even at the DFAC, where you're just an airman. You have to make leadership decisions, and you have almost zero training to do whatsoever, except that, you know what, we're just going to make this decision, and we're going to stick by it.
yeah.
But that's what makes our force so great, though.
I agree.
Because there are other countries, I'm not going to name any specifically, that before they can even, let's say, open a door, they got to call the wing leadership that say, do we have permission to do this? I've been to areas where I'm getting ready to download an airplane, and I'm like, all right, guys, well, we did customs, we're good to go download the airplane. And this guy looked at me, he goes, don't you need to talk to your leadership? And I was like, no, man, just start downloading. He goes, but okay. And he was so shocked. And then when I was talking to my supervisor about it later, they were like, yeah, that's because this particular government, they have to go all the way up to the wing leadership to get that kind of permission. And this was like equivalent to an LT. And so,
Yeah, that phrase I said earlier, decision space, I think a lot of us are probably familiar with that, but it frees up so much decision power for our highest levels of leadership when we're capable of like doing an assessment of the situation and making decisions at a lower level for them. I mean, they're ultimately the ones responsible, but they are the ones who give us that ability to make the decisions. And part of it is because we organize things so well so that we can do that. And I think that's a pretty, cool aspect of our military.
yeah,
I
I mean,
agree.
the decisions you all make is, like I said, just we have a lot of trust in, even just as low as an airman. You have a lot of, we put a lot of trust in you. I've gone out there to my packing line. I've talked to my folks. I give them some complex, like, hey, here's what needs to get done. And they go and execute, and they do it very well. And I think as leaders, we have to make sure that our leaders, sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we get a little complacent. My thing is always, if you got to keep coming to me for permission to do something, what did I do to make you feel like you need my permission? Um, I, I'll give you a quick example. I had a tech sergeant. I just pinned on master at the time, and we had a deployment operation. And I told her, hey, I'm not going out there. You're running the show, run it. And I kind of went out there. I was just checking every so often. And I came out one time, and she came up to me, and she's like, hey, sir, I made a mistake. And I said, what's up? She told me the thing, and she told me what she did. And she said how the airman said that I had the same problem and how I handled it. And I said, okay, but did it work though? Your decision, did it work? And she said, yeah. And I said, and what did I tell you when you came out here? It's my show. Exactly. I expect you to when you encounter problems, resolve it, fix it. And if it's wrong, then it gets to my level and we'll talk about it later. And it's not going to be like a, hey, you messed up, you suck. It'll be more of a, hey, here's what you did. And it's not what I would have done, but it's fine. Just maybe do this in the future. But I could tell when I did that with her, she was like, oh. And that's when she learned, like, you're a leader. I need you to make tough decisions. And I asked her, I'm like, do I micromanage you? She said, no. Then I'm like, there you go. Go forth, conquer. And then if you don't know if you made the right or wrong decision, then come talk to me. I'm here as more of guidance. I'm not here to, I got years on people. So that's where I think as leaders, we have to be able to empower our leaders to make tough decisions. And if they do make wrong decisions, which they're going to do, instead of chastising them and beating them up, get into the thought matrix of why did you make that decision? What led you to that decision? And when you walk down that path, you could start maybe helping them identify, but stay away from the hindsights where like, yeah, now we know why it was a bad decision. You stay away from that. But if it was like the AFI says this, right? Yes. Then why did you go against it? I just didn't feel like it. Well, that's wrong.
Yeah.
So just food for thought. That's something I've learned over my time is when you try to get into their shoes and their mindset, that's when you can kind of help them, fix themselves, or you might find out even you're wrong. And guess what? You got to be able to say, you know what? I think what you did was better.
So as decision makers, obviously we want to make sure that we're capable of making those best decisions. We talked a little bit about, getting feedback. Talking to leadership can be something that helps us identify what it is that we need to do to move forward. What are some other methods that any of you are familiar with to help you become better decision makers?
I really like what he was saying, though. What you're saying, where you just gave the responsibility to some of your lower enlisted guys. I think that's, for me personally, it's like the best way to learn. Right?
It's hard.
It's difficult, but I think it's the best teacher. Honestly, if you're just like, here's your task. You have X amount of time to complete it. Get after it. If you need help, maybe I'll help you.
No, and it shouldn't be maybe. You should always be there to guide them, right? But there's some things where it's like if they want you to take on certain tasks, and it's like, no. You need to be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But you should. My thing is always every job I assign is probably a job I've done at some point in my career.
Yeah.
And if I haven't done it, I'm probably going to take it on, not because I don't trust you and I want to micromanage it, but I'm taking it because I want to make sure that I understand what it is you're going to go through if I do ever assign you to it. So that, because there's nothing more frustrating than someone gives you a job and they're like, here you go do this. And you're like, well, what does that look like? I don't know. And that can stress you out.
Yeah, that's very stressful.
So I would say, and everybody keeps thinking like, oh, once you're a staff, tech, master, or senior master, and you have less responsibility. Heck no. I got more. But the thing is I try to stay at least up to date on how to do things so that when I do get asked, I'm not that useless senior. But here's the thing. From a senior airman, you should be able to go to your staff. Hey, I have a question. I need help. And if they don't know, then there's a chain of command. If I have a senior airman come to my office, it's not that I don't want to talk to you, but it's like, hey, there's a lot of people in between you and I. And because sometimes some people try to bypass because they want, they're trying to get daddy to override what mom said. And I'm not doing that. It's like, have you talked to this person? Nope. Well, guess what? You need to go talk to them because I'm not making that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, I might make a new decision based on you skipping the chain of commands.
Well, and I got to be careful what I say, because if I say, hey, here's what we're going to do, and then you're doing it, and let's say he comes to you and says, hey, why are you doing it this way? Well, senior said to. And now he's going to feel like I just belittled him, or, or I don't value him now. And so I have to be very careful about what I say, because then it becomes this awkward, like, so let's say you're my master sergeant. Do you think it's awkward to come to me and tell me that, hey, I wish you didn't make that decision. I wish you let me make that decision?
It can be, yes. And it can also be like, what's my job here if all the decisions are being made
By me.
over my head? Yeah.
Yeah.
You're getting paid as an NCO. Guess what? You're doing NCO work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I don't think it helps us at all if we're just putting all the decision authority into one person, Because,
You're
like you
setting
said,
up failure.
yeah, if we have this single point of failure where we can't move forward without that one person, awful. It's just awful.
You've done your job wrong as a leader, in my opinion.
Hmm.
If you are waiting to get my decision on something,
Mhm.
then I need to figure out why. Why is it hinging on me? If I'm on leave and people call, I don't mind getting a call, but and if I get a call, it better be more about like, hey, we have a problem and it's going to be something that you're going to have to deal with when you get back. So we're just kind of passing this by you. If you're
Mhm.
okay with what we're about to do, that's one thing.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
But if it's like, how do I flip a burger? That's
How do I do the easiest aspects of my job?
exactly.
Yeah.
I'd be like, okay, what did I do wrong now? Because now you feel like you have to come to me.
Mhm.
Or, hey, how do I type in my password for security? You know, it's like, well, first off, that's a security violation.
Well, I do think that if you're trying to become a better decision making person, that there's a lot of avenues that you could go down. There's classes that you can always be taking, whether it's the biggest decisions of your life. Do I separate or retire? There's the Military and Family Readiness Center that you can go use. There's of course your host of folks who are in your chain of command, your peers that can help you out on making certain decisions. But whether they are large or small, make sure that you're using those avenues so that you can be making the best decision that you can. So, anybody else have anything before we close up for today?
The only other thing I can think of, just something that has always helped me become a better decision maker, is when I do make a decision, I may go to my like immediate supervisors, like, hey, this is what we're doing in regards to getting the meal out. I've assigned these people in these places. How do you feel about it? And it can be nice to just like have that feedback with people who have been in those situations before. I've worked with quite a few of uh, NCOs, senior NCOs, all from different career fields. Just getting that feedback in general from as many different viewpoints as possible. And then just, when you have the downtime, just sort of kind of like learning what people have done before and not necessarily pirating it, but like making it your own, making your own decisions based off of what works.
Mm-hmm.
I think when it comes to making hard decisions, as I already kind of discussed, if there's something in your mind where if you don't fully understand something, you need to take the time to figure out, is there a way for me to bring some light to this thing that I don't
Mhm.
know? I think in all aspects of our life, a lot of what bothers us, why we get emotional about things, even when you're crying, in my opinion, it's probably because there's something that you cannot figure out in your brain or handle. And so, whereas once you kind of understand okay, this makes more sense, or this thing that I wasn't sure about, now I know what's going to happen, you're a little more at peace with it. It's like going to a psychologist when you have a problem. You just need someone to put words to your feelings for you to kind of be able to process what it is that's going on in your head. So make sure you're talking to plenty of people, getting feedback. Make sure that if you have to do some research, what works, what doesn't work, and be open to that your decision may be a bad decision,
Yeah.
and that people can correct you. But overall, what is the overall intent? And I think that's the last thing that we need to talk about is the intent piece. What am I trying to accomplish? And if you could figure out the intent, then making a decision is easy. Well, I won't say easy, but it makes it easier to be able to find a better, like, what's the way forward. And that intent could be what's going to work for my wife and I, what's going to work for my kids, what's going to work for my commander, what's going to work for my supervisor, first sergeant, whoever it is. And so if it's like a commander's thing, for example, hey, sir, what's your opinion? Like, what is your intent? What do you want from this? And when he gives you that intent, sometimes that's the missing piece. It's like, hey, you got to do this. It's like, I don't know what to do. Well, who assigned this? The commander. Cool. What is the commander's intent? Well, the commander's is wants whatever. Cool. I will then make a decision that hopefully meets the criteria of what the commander wants. And that, again, as leaders making decision, intent is the biggest thing you need to understand, or the Air Force or whatever. So when I make decisions, kind of like the example I gave about the non-reenlistment, it's what's in the best interest of the Air Force? What does the Air Force want? And by me kind of pulling that all together, it's not the leader who I said, hey, you're done, you're out. And then on top of that, my rank requires me to make those hard decisions. Your rank requires you to make hard decisions.
Absolutely.
And at your level, you have to make hard decisions.
Yeah.
So make sure you understand the intent of whether it's your career field, your commander, your supervisor, not in that order, by the way, sorry, but you know, to all those things, right? And also in your personal lives, you know, if you have spouses and kids, what is the intent? Like, what is your intent? And hopefully it's good things. So
That's a very helpful consideration that we should keep in mind is what intent, what is the end result that we want to achieve?
because once you figure that out, sorry, I know you're trying to close it out.
Yeah.
I'm continuing the conversation, but no, I mean, as leaders, right? I tell my guys all the time, it's your job to look at the AFIs and understand the intent of what it. When you read a statement, you got to ask yourself, why is this statement in here? What is this telling me to do? What is the intent of that statement? Once you figure out that intent, then you can make. There's times where as the saying goes, good leaders follow rules. Great leaders know when to break those rules. And there's times I've looked at AFI and I'm like, I know what that intent is, and it doesn't fit for what I'm doing for the mission, and I'm willing to answer for not following this. And most times, you know, everybody, you know, it's kind of like that scene out of Inglourious Basterds where the guy's like, "You'll be shot for this," and the guy's like, more like a, you know, chewing. And I've dealt with that before.
Right.
And I'll tell you now, most times if my boss is like, "Why did you make the decision?" I go through my decision making, you know, how I got to that point. I explain, you know, what I feel is the intent, and I would say I don't think I've had a single time where I was told you were wrong. It's usually been, okay, cool, have a good day.
Right on. Well, it sounds like you got some good leadership you're working with. And hopefully you guys are all talking out there with your leadership and getting that positive feedback so that you can, you know, be better decision makers. I want to say thank you to all of you for being here, Senior Appleby. And I think that we're going to do, you know, great things, you know, after this podcast. Better decision makers out there. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.